Welcome to East Gippsland Shire Council's meeting here in the Council Chambers on Tuesday the 23rd of the 5th, 23/5/23. There's some interesting numbers. It's 6 o'clock, so I'll start the meeting. East Gippsland Shire Council live streams, records and publishes its meetings via webcasting. These recordings are available for viewing by the public. During the meeting, any member of the public who are addressing the Council will have their image and comments recorded. No other person has the right to record Council meetings unless approval has been granted by the Chair, and that's me tonight. In line with the Local Government Act 2020, councillors are able to attend Council meetings electronically or in person, and the meeting will be open to the public via live streaming. Members of the public are invited to view the live stream Council meeting by following the link on Council's website or the Facebook page. If Council encounters a technical difficulty tonight, most unlikely, with the live streaming during the meeting, we'll adjourn until the issue is resolved. If technical issues can't be resolved, the meeting may be postponed to a later date or time. That has never happened. We acknowledge the Gunai, Kurnai, Monero and Bidawal peoples as the traditional custodians of the land and waters that encompass East Gippsland Shire and their enduring relationship with the country. The traditional custodians have cared and nurtured East Gippsland for tens of thousands of years. Council values their living culture and practices and their right to self-determination. Council pays respects to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples living in East Gippsland, their elders past, present and future. I don't think we have any apologies tonight, CEO, and I'm asking, are there any declarations of conflict of interest?
We do have one.
Yes, I do have a conflict of interest in relation to the item on the agenda, which is 5.2.1, and I'll leave the chamber at that time.
Thanks, Mr McConnell. Sorry about that, councillors. I'm actually just a step out here, so I'm going to go back to this important item in 1.1, and that is a member's attendance can only be recorded as present at the council meeting when they can confirm that they meet these criteria. There's 3 of them. They can hear proceedings, they can see each other and members in attendance and can be seen by other members, and they can be heard to speak. So I'm now going to confirm with each councillor, being Councillor White and Councillor Buckley, that they can see, hear and be heard by each other, and to note their assurance from each that their location they're participating from is secure to ensure confidential deliberations remain confidential. Councillor White, good evening. Can you see and hear us?
Yes, I can.
Thank you. Can you confirm the location you're participating from is secure to ensure confidential items are dealt with in a confidential manner?
Yes, it is very secure, thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, Councillor Buckley. Can you see and hear us?
Yes, I can.
Great. Can you confirm the location you're participating from is secure to ensure confidential items are dealt with in a confidential manner?
Yes, it is.
And for a note, thank you, Councillor, if a councillor participating electronically experiences technical difficulties during the meeting, we may adjourn briefly to enable that councillor to rejoin the meeting. Should that councillor be unable to reconnect within 5 minutes, the meeting shall resume in the councillor's absence. Thank you. Councillors, item 1.4 is the confirmation of the minutes. Can I have a councillor to confirm the confirmation of the minutes, please? Councillor Allen. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Crook, thank you. Councillor Allen? Did you want to speak to the motion, please?
I would, thank you, Mayor.
Yep.
I'd like to move that the minutes of the council meeting held on the 2nd of May 2023 be confirmed with the following administrative amendment to the report presented at item 1.7.1.1, Petition, Cease Construction Defence Raymond Island. The original report states the petition included 48 signatures, 41 of which met the governance requirements. Can the minutes please reflect that the petition includes 60 signatures, 53 of which met the governance requirements?
I'm just going to ask the seconder accepts that amendment.
Yes.
Yep, thank you. Councillor Allen, did you want to speak to the motion now?
No, that's all. Thanks, Mayor.
Councillor Crook, did you want to speak to it? Councillors, is that motion opposed? Would anybody else like to speak for or against it? Councillors, we're just going to move then that we're confirming the minutes with that minor amendment. All those in favour? Thank you, councillors. The motion is carried. The next meeting is going to be scheduled for Tuesday the 6th of June, right here in the Corporate Centre, Main Street, Bairnstone, commencing at 6 p.m. 1.6, is there any requests for leave of absence? Not that we've seen.
None have been received.
Great, thank you. Councillors, I'm going to move on to open forum, and I'm going to start open forum by acknowledging the youth ambassadors, our vibrant and lively young people who participate in and contribute to decisions of council and provide advice we seek, receive and often act on their advice. And I just want to call you out in particular. Thank you for being here. We've enjoyed having a meal with you, and we acknowledge the work you do over and above your busy young lives as they are. So, quick round of applause for those youth ambassadors. I'd also like to acknowledge Annabelle Brazzali. Is that the correct pronunciation? Yes, Annabelle. Where's Annabelle? Hello, Annabelle. Annabelle is a Junior Rotary Community Award participant from St Mary's Primary School. And Mum is Louise, who's here. And Annabelle, one day we hope that you might become a youth ambassador, and this is the start of your journey to leadership. And we acknowledge everybody in the community starts their leadership journey somewhere by attending something like this. And we also acknowledge the Rotary International for funding and resourcing the Junior Rotary Award certificate. So, Annabelle, we normally embarrass you by me coming up and pinning or passing a little lapel pin onto you. So just a moment. Annabelle, you don't have to stay here for a long time too, by the way, so you're probably a busy person, you've got sports practice and music practice and you've got to go home and have dinner. Okay, let's move on. Councillors, petitions. I don't think we have any petitions tonight.
No.
Questions of Council, CEO?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. We do have one question of Council, which is from Ms Miriam Bassett, and I'm not sure if she's not online. No, she was hoping to be online, but she has asked me to read her question.
Okay, and you're happy to do that?
I am, if
Great,
I can find the
thank you.
question buried in paperwork. So the question reads, and then there is a short context as well. I would like to inquire what the corporate centre at 55 Palmers Road, Lakes Entrance is being used for. The context reads, this is a unique and stunning property owned by the residents of East Gippsland. It would seem that it is unused to the public as its doors are closed for use. Because of its favourable location of joining the Aquadome, this property is rich in potential in serving the whole community as opposed to be locked up for bureaucratic use. 55 Palmers Road could be extensively used by East Gippsland residents in a way that would be advantageous to their well-being. The 55 Palmers Road building could be managed by a group of people elected by the people for various local programs, such as a conference centre, including permanent rooms, excuse me, allocated for various trade meeting rooms, such as local arts and crafts. Please, I look forward to hearing your response to my question as to 55 Palmers Road current use. Thank you.
Thank
and
you,
I'll
CEO.
refer to Mr Cannizzaro.
Peter, thanks.
Thank you, Mr CEO. The question that I will respond to is what is the corporate centre of 55 Palmers Road, Lakes Entrance being used for? Firstly, I might add that 55 Palmers Road, Lakes Entrance is not the corporate centre. So the corporate centre is here at 273 Main Street in Bairnsdale. And to respond to the question in terms of its use, the property at 55 Palmers Road, Lakes Entrance houses office-based staff, which includes functions from the Business Excellence Directorate and the Assets Directorate, and they vary from the governance team, the risk team, the property team. the Sustainability and Waste team, the Comms Laws team, Occupational Health and Safety, Freedom of Information functions as well, councillors. Thank you.
Mr Cannizzaro, thank you. And we note that Miriam has just joined us and the CEO has read your question for you, and Mr Cannizzaro has just answered it. Do we have any public submissions, CEO?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, we have 2 public submissions on any other matters. We'll be dealing with those now.
Happy to deal with them now?
Yep.
They're not specific to items in the agenda?
No, they're not. Any other matter?
Okay, let's do that.
The first one is Miss Joanne Eastman, who I believe is here.
Thank you. Mayor, councillors, CEO. I've got to say, this is just absolutely awful having to stand up here. There used to be a nice table that you could sit at and feel like you weren't like a, I don't know. But if I'm going to preach, I'll preach. Yeah. It just does not feel comfortable. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I wanted to talk about the rural land use and housing and development, housing and settlement strategies. I have previously written to councillors about it, expressing my opinions about the strategies. I apologise for not being as well organised as I should be, but before I start, I'd just like to make reference to something about good decision making and the hidden traps in decision making that I think is really relevant to all of us. We all get caught up with what they call confirmation bias, and when you're making decisions like this, one of the big problems you've got is what they call the anchoring trap, which is when it leads us to give disproportionate weight to the first information we receive. So presenting councillors with a draft document effectively stops them thinking about alternatives, the things that may not have been considered. The same with policymakers, decision makers when they're constructing policy. The smaller the group of people they consult with and the more limited their background, the less likely the policymakers are to consider alternatives. In fact, they're more likely to actively and sometimes hostilely dismiss anything they haven't considered in the first place. And I know what it's like sitting around the room when you've made up your mind on different policy stuff and someone comes in and challenges you on it. You automatically start to see the challenger as perhaps an enemy because they're not agreeing with what you are putting forward. And so I'm asking that you open your minds up a bit with this, because it's very difficult when you put something on the table and someone's challenging it. No one likes criticism. But I think it's really important because this strategy, the housing development and the rural land use one, are going to have massive implications for our region for many years to come. And it concerns me that they've been developed without full regard to what's needed right across East Gippsland. It strikes me when I had a look at them to see who'd been consulted with the development of the strategies, and it's a very small group. I acknowledge that the Agricultural Advisory Group had some sort of input into it, but when I look back at their input, it appears that there was a draft strategy put in front of them. They didn't have a meeting. They made the decision that they better, develop a policy position or whatever. They said they emailed it to people. Well, who did they email it to? How many people in the farming communities were actually spoken to about it? We can be I'm a public servant, we can be very coy about who we consult with and who we don't. It concerns me when I look at that limited consultation base and I see some of the decisions put forward in those strategies. For example, there is to the west of Bairnsdale, a decision to set aside land for potential horticultural purposes in the future almost, to make sure that land is not sterilised from that, and that we're putting so much focus on the potential for horticulture without looking at all the other rich farms around the place. They're not necessarily big farmers, but they add value and richness to our lifestyles. So why are we only looking at what maybe even 1 or 2 horticulturalists want? We've got 12 people in horticulture on the flats. Not all of them would be saying we want land set aside for potential to irrigate on the hills in future. Why are we focused so much on such a small group of people. It really concerns me. And having lived in a district for many years, where you've got more than just farmers there, and you get newcomers coming in, small lots and all that, it just adds to the character of a district. It enriches it. This is going to seem all over the shop, but I'm really concerned that the strategy is saying, well, we're only going to limit things to agriculture, and if you're not able to show that you're related to agriculture in some way, we're not going to let things go ahead. And that seems to be a policy that's been put out for all the outlying areas, rural areas across Gippsland. Those towns like Can River, Swifts Creek, Ensay, they're in a different position now, particularly post-COVID, because so many people can work from home post-COVID. You can have much richer communities if you don't just limit yourself to agriculture. It feels like we're looking backwards instead of forwards. Another concern I have with the emphasis on horticulture and it talks broadacre farming in the strategy. Well, you'll have to forgive me, but I don't think there's any broadacre farming in Gippsland. We're not exactly the Western District. It just means farmers that are bigger than average. But what you find you're at risk of doing is the same as what happened with the dairy industry with Murray Goulburn. Murray...
So Joanne, that's 5 minutes. You happy to wind up now, please?
Is that 5 minutes already?
Yeah. Happy to summarise. If you're happy to have a comment in summary.
I would hope that this goes out to a proper consultation and that it goes out to the districts across East Gippsland, because there are 12 recognised districts. They haven't been considered in this consultation. There's so much else in here. A determination to reduce the size of the districts, reduce the outlying districts like Mallacoota and Canberra by 9%, so that you can grow Painesville by 10%. Just, there's so much in this strategy that doesn't make any sense for the whole of East Gippsland. And the last thing I'd like to say is I think that it's time that Council is aware that it's almost treating Far East Gippsland and outlying areas the way we hate being treated by Melbourne. When everything's centralised, no one seems to see past Spring Street. Well, this is making it look as though no one can see past that Painesville Lakes entrance Bairnsdale triangle. We've got a huge region, it's a beautiful region, and the whole of it needs looking after, not just for the sake of a few developers or a few agriculturalists. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. And CEO, we had another speaker.
Thank you, Mayor. Miss Jeanette Wagner, who I believe is here, I spoke to earlier, is wishing to speak in regard to the housing and settlement strategy, I understand.
Great.
Evening, councillors and Mayor.
Evening.
I don't know if you can hear me because I had a bit of trouble hearing Joanne out there. I've got questions on the draft housing and settlement strategy too, because I think I am thinking a lot about our future generations and what they are going to have to deal with. I think that we've all been really, really lucky. I've lived here in Painesville for 50 years, and I think this whole region is an amazing area, and a lot of people are moving to this region. The majority of the time it's not to buy little tiny blocks. They want more land, right? So I'm on a 1,000 square metre block, so a quarter acre block. And it's been, really great to be able to bring my children up there, and, they've got room to get around, get away from the screens. Today it's a bit different. But yeah, I really do focus on how anything is going to affect the future generations. Not that I'll be here to see it, but I really sort of worry about what's going to happen there. One of the questions that I have got regarding the draft housing and settlement strategy is, what is the problem with our existing system? Why do we have to change it? Can anybody answer that for me? Because I think we've been extremely lucky, and if you've lived in this region for quite a while, I'm sure most of you will feel the same as I do, that I don't think that anything needs to be changed, except I think we do, having come from a retail background, because I used to have a retail store in Bailey Street in Bairnsdale, and you know, a lot of the retail systems are changing and we need to start looking at that too, I think, and some of the things that have been brought up recently with Nicholson Street, I think really need to be addressed urgently. So that's away from this, but I just think that we've got, there's quite a lot of things that council could be looking at. The other question I've got with regard to a draft housing and settlement strategy, who will benefit by the changes? Who's going to benefit? Is it going to be the coming generations? I don't think so. I'd like to know why it's being taken on in the first place, because you know, we've got such a large region. East Gippsland's a very large region, and you know, we've got a very large agricultural sector, and I really don't. That actually, excuse me, makes this region survive, and I know that from being in retail. And also in the finance industry, you know, that if we don't look after our systems that we have and the community, that, yeah, I used to be a councillor, but long before amalgamation, well, not long before, but 94, 95, so it's a fair while ago, when the first thing that we considered was our community and how they're going to be affected by our decisions. And I think that is so important that, you know, councillors need to do this and look at, you know, what's happening and how any decisions we make are going to affect their future. Because it's not me or even my children that will be affected, it will be my grandchildren. So I'm extremely concerned about how this strategy would affect them. I've spoken to my granddaughter about it, who's just started her first job, and yeah, she's very excited about being able to bring up her children in this region that she's lived in all of her life. She just absolutely loves it. So that's why I'm so keen to make sure that we continue doing that and really considering the future generations with whatever decisions are made. So, you know, it's not just about farming, agriculture, it's about tourism, it's about a whole lot of things. So we need to make sure that there's going to be a satisfactory life for those future generations.
Thanks, Jeanette.
Thank you very much for your time and for listening, and I'll look forward to seeing what the outcome is going to be. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Thank you, Joanne and Jeanette. Both raised some points that councillors can take on board. Thanks very much for your contribution. Councillors, I will move now. I think that's all our public submissions, CEO. We don't have any notices of motion. There's nothing to note, 1.8. There's no deferred business. So, councillors, if you are happy to move on to your councillor or delegate reports. Terrific. You happy to go, Deputy Mayor?
Yeah.
Take it away.
Thank you, Mark. Well, I've got to say the last 3 weeks, in a word, have been busy. And in that time, we visited Wellington Shire as a group. And I won't dwell on that because others will want to talk about that. Committee meetings. And both of those groups are aimed at improving both rail and road networks across the region and across the eastern seaboard to improve the movement of freight right across Australia. Along with Councillor Jane, and she's got this on video, so I'll let her talk about it in detail, I attended the Dragon Boat Awakening, which was an absolutely fantastic event. And next time you hear that there's going to be line dances, it's not necessarily country music and boot scooting. It was a Chinese dance troupe that with ceremonial lines, and it was just really great to see. And on the same day, I had the pleasure of attending the presentations for the Lakes Entrance Surf Club Paddle Challenge, which started alongside the Dragon Boat event. And there was 150 entrants in that paddle challenge, and all of them completed the event. And that drew people from as far as Queensland, so it's a major thing for our region. The day after that, I attended the presentations for the X-Marathon Adventure event that was held in Lakes, which is an endurance event for ultra athletes, 24-hour, 12-hour or 4-hour events all run. And they had to check off a number of checkpoints as part of their orienteering part of the adventure. And the interesting part about that is that one checkpoint was not found. I presume that they're still out there in the bush waiting for someone to turn up. But that was a really good event, and that was supported by the East Gippsland Shire to the tune of $10,000. And again, that drew competitors from right across Australia. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, this week just gone, I attended the volunteer recognition events at Johnsonville, Paynesville and Marlow, and they were all very, very well attended. And it was a great opportunity for us as councillors and representatives of the community to thank the volunteers who make our community what it is and make everything run. And I've got to say that Benjo, who I'd never met until last Wednesday morning, by the time we finished I knew him very well. You presented very well on video, Benjo, so well done. And just on Saturday, just gone past in the freezing cold rain, I had the honour of opening the EV Expo organised by Sunrise Rotary at St Mary's, and as part of that event I had the privilege of cutting the ribbon to officially open our EV charger in the McDonald's car park. And again, that was a really, really well organised and well attended event. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor, thank you, and thanks for your report. I'll just acknowledge the work that you've done in assisting where I haven't been here because of some personal commitments over the last couple of weeks. So
Thank you, mate.
Councillor Stowe.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, there's been a lot of roads, race and rubbish as per usual, but I won't go over a lot of the stuff that Arthur's already mentioned and some of you are going to, but I had the pleasure of attending the citizenship ceremony with the Mayor and Mr Peter Carazaro at St Mary's recently, and these events are not to be underestimated. It really means a lot to the people who are receiving their citizenship. I thought it was very well carried out by the Mayor and the Council staff member Peter, and Tim Bull and I got to assist by presenting some flowers to the people, so a good day was had by all. The other thing is, I'll mention, is the brim competition that was held at Mallacoota. Shire was a major sponsor of this. All the brim of the Coota released back into the lake again, which is great, and I think it accounted for about 150 people staying there for 3 days, which is good for the economy of Mallacoota. Thank you.
Thanks for that report. Councillor Crook.
It has indeed been a busy couple of weeks, meeting with locals and getting around the district. Last Wednesday was a highlight for me, the Ida Hobbit flag raising ceremony in Bairnsdale. There were a small but concerted group of local residents and community members and councillors met with the LGBTIQ plus community to raise the rainbow flag in solidarity with people's aspirations to build inclusion and respect for diversity around gender and sexuality in our community. To think back in time, the raising of this flag was illegal in this country not that long ago. And in doing so in other places of the world remains a crime. Something I think we can all help to change by highlighting the issues to counter this injustice, if nothing more. Last Thursday, I found myself on Raymond Island, meeting with the concerned residents there around the use of a piece of public land foreshore. I remain fairly confident that we can chart a pathway forward that all residents can live with, which caters for their different needs, while meeting our obligations to protect and enhance the local environment that we all love. Last week I also attended the National Volunteer Week celebrations at the Paynesville Men's Shed, where I spoke to quite a large group of people, gathered residents, about the important contribution volunteers make to many aspects of our lives, and how Council has established a volunteers role, honours role, to formalise this recognition. And I sincerely thank all those in our community who continue to dedicate their time to a wide variety of issues to improve the well-being of those around us, and I congratulate them on their efforts. On Saturday, I too attended the Electric Vehicle Expo, and while the sun wasn't shining and the wind wasn't really blowing, the batteries were fully charged and people were all pretty excited. It was an honour to see the Deputy Mayor officially open our first bank of EV chargers right across the region, and the event was, I think, a real celebration of our collective action in the renewable energy space, which is nothing short of a revolution that we are now a part of, that will deliver not only cleaner transport, but cheaper transport for our communities into the future. I feel like that's probably enough for now, so I might pass it on to Councillor Kirsten. Thank you.
Good on you, Councillor Crook. Councillor Van Diggle, thank you.
Thank you. I returned from my honeymoon, which was really exciting, a couple of weeks ago, but as soon as I was back, I was unwell. So unfortunately, a number of events that I wanted to attend, I wasn't able to attend, but I too had a little bit of a spiel about Ida Hobbit, but you did very well on covering off on that. But I did want to say to those who don't know what Ida Hobbit is, it stands for the International Day Against Homophobia, Biphobia and Transphobia. And what's interesting to note about May the 17th is that was actually the date in 1990 when the World Health Organization removed homosexuality from the International Classification of Diseases related mental health problems. So it's only really 33 years ago, like you said, that it's basically not being considered a mental health issue. So I want to thank, I think the youth ambassadors also planned the Ida Hobbit flag raising, and then I went to the event at the library afterwards and just played some games with some of the young people and ate a lot of Skittles, if you remember that. So I also have attended a few events that are the same as other councillors, so I won't go over it, but I did attend the Disability Advisory Committee meeting yesterday. I had the pleasure of chairing it, which was really wonderful. There were several reports from council staff, so one of them being Zoe, who spoke about the capital works projects and had raised a number of capital work projects in the next financial year that the DAC might be interested in being part of through all the phases of the delivery of that project. So they've chosen a couple, but they've also stated that they'd really like to work on our digital inclusivity and accessibility for our websites, our council facilities, to do such things as access keys to let people with disabilities know, or anyone, I guess, with a little bit of hesitation accessing new services, what they can expect when they come to a council facility. So, you know, we've done a great job with that at the Bairnsdale Aquadome, is that what you call it here? Yeah, Buck. But looking at other facilities that we have, like libraries and access keys. So that's something that they want to work on. It's not part of the capital works projects, but that's something that they said that they really want to focus on. And we also, Peter presented the road safety strategy to them. There wasn't a lot of feedback at the time because it was little time to digest the information, but they're going to read it individually and hopefully submit some stuff. But I think, Mindy, I'll let you talk about the electric vehicles component of that meeting and the concerns that they raised. So yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Councillor Van Diggle, thank you. Councillor Buckley.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, because of my remote location and owning a farm and a business, I don't have the luxury of attending many community events, although I do try to get to local ones. I do dedicate my time, though, reading policies. And I've been approached by a lot of people and had a lot of phone calls in the last few weeks about who have deep concerns about the rural land use strategy, which is coming to council on the 6th of June. So that has taken up quite a lot of my time, and I would hope that the community has more time to put input in regards to that matter. Yes, and also I've had calls, especially some today, from concerned residents about the closure of the native timber industry and the huge effects that it will have on our communities. So I'm sure as councillors we're all very concerned about what that means for the economy and what we can do to try and support people through this, terrible time. So I'll leave my report as brief and hand it over through you, Mayor.
Councillor Buckley, thank you. Councillor White.
Well, thank you. I too have not been out and about much other than to continue to support members of the community who have issues, re-council, and continue to do that work. But unfortunately, many of the submissions that I've put through to officers are going, they're going nowhere, which is disappointing. They've not been responded to, and there are people out in the community now who are getting very upset the fact that they have serious concerns about different issues, and we are not responding to their requests. So I think I'm going to be having a meeting with the CEO, who's been on leave, but welcome back, Anthony, to discuss how to get through this impasse, because I believe we're not performing to our full potential. Thank you.
Councillor White, I'm sorry to hear that's the perspective you have, and if there's anything we can do to ensure that that whatever communication you are providing is getting to the right place and being responded to, we will do what we can. Councillor Greeson.
Thank you, Mayor. I've been very busy, so I'm not going to go through everything that I've done, but I will talk about a few things. Early in May, Councillor Crook and I travelled to Can River and met up with the new working group to discuss the best site for a new transfer station. And this has been an issue for the Can River people for some time, but the meeting was fantastic. It was cordial and it was constructive. We came to a number of agreements about a range of issues that those people have, wanted to take up with council, and identified a number of sites that they were happy to be considered, and we went and had a look at a few of them. So that was a very constructive day. I've met with LARJAC, which is a local Aboriginal Justice Advisory Committee, and there hasn't been a meeting for a little while, but it was the opportunity to introduce the East Gippsland Shire Council's Aboriginal Engagement Officer, Courtney Peterson, to them. Courtney's been with us for 6 months now and is making real headway with the Aboriginal communities. Councillor Uri and I met with Bevan Kearsley, who's riding his wheelchair around Australia to raise funds for disabled access. And very, very clever contraption. His wheelchair is adapted to fit into a 3-wheel motorbike, and it's really impressive. So he's riding around Australia at 70 kilometres an hour, accompanied by 2 support people in the combi. And I do wish him well, and I do hope he raises the level of funds that he was hoping to for disabled access. I was pleased to open the 3 artists exhibition at the East Gippsland Art Gallery, and that's Glenys Mann's Eugen, Deirdre Jacks of Mountains and Ponds, and Lee Nicholas's High Tech Art, sorry, I get that right. So it's another fantastic exhibition put on by the inimitable Crystal Stubbs and her team. Now, Eugen is a new word for me, Y-U-G-E-N. It's a lovely Japanese word, I think, or Chinese, but it's the subtle profundity of things that are only vaguely suggested. Have you got it?
Yeah.
Anyway, there's a lot of definitions. It's a really lovely word. Now, Councillor Allen said that he wanted me to talk about the awakening of the dragon.
Yes.
And that was a fantastic ceremony. It was cold and wet and windy and awful day. But there were a lot of people there and they ran through their ceremony really well, and it involved dotting the eye of the dragon, dotting the heart of the dragon, which is the drum, and dotting the tail. And then there were a whole range of other things that happened. And the lion dances were fantastic. L-I-O-N, not L-I-N-E. And I need to acknowledge the fact that the Palm Lake Resort, Paynesville, funded this new dragon boat and also the event. And they came down from Queensland, as well as local people. So it was wonderful. They were great. And I think the highlight, no, it wasn't a highlight.
It was, tell the truth.
When they finally got into this boat and rowed out and then turned parallel to the beach, and it was a beautiful thing, and gliding through the water. And I don't know whether they meant it to happen, but they were hit broadside by a little wave and tipped over. And so they were effectively baptised, I think, but it was shallow and they all stood up, and they were probably warmer in the water than out, is my guess. But it was a great event and good on them. A range of other things. The Youth Agritech Expo at the Hub was really good. It's 2 days when school students were taken out to visit local farms and other facilities, and then attend sessions on farm safety, demonstrations about composting by Cohen's farmers. The Gippsland Agri Research Group were there, of course. And there was a presentation by a food futurist. And you're nodding, you know what a food futurist is?
I saw it advertised, I'm interested to learn.
Well, I thought it was a bit spooky, but he talked about when there's 12 billion people on this earth and not enough land to grow food, and talked about research that's actually being done now where they're growing food in air and using air. And I mean, it's very clever, the stuff that's happening. It's very special. The only other thing I'll mention was the Nungurna Firewires garden program that I opened on Friday, and that's held at the Nungurna Primary School. It's a 6-week program pulled together by Nungurna Land Care and Coast Care Group, the primary school, Wild Seed Nursery, Catherine van Wilgenberg, and the local residents of Nungurna, Metung and Swan Reach. And the aim of the program is to teach and learn about planting gardens that are fire resistant. And that was a really good day, actually, and you know, in 6 weeks, I think Councillor Uri will be going back and seeing how the garden's growing. Thank you.
Councillor Breeston, thanks. Councillor Uri.
Thank you, Mayor. As other councillors, I've been busy over the last few weeks. I just wanted to focus my report, though. I'll submit my written report for inclusion with the minutes, but just wanted to speak briefly about 2 of the events. One of them is the Youth Agritech Expo, which Councillor Greeson has already spoken about. But on the 14th of May, I attended a community meeting at the old geriatric site in Bairnsdale. I'd like to say that over many years I've witnessed a gradual shift in Council's relationship with our many and varied communities across East Gippsland. Councillors working to listen better, dictate less, encourage self-determination and reconsider what consultation really means. In other words, to provide the conditions for communities to thrive, which is part of the vision of our council plan. While this is a slow and sometimes bumpy process, I think it's a healthy one, and we see the benefits in what we call resilient and strong communities in planning for disruption and changing futures while optimising opportunities. The small group of people who invited councillors to join them at this meeting on the 14th of May, I think epitomise this shift, and I think are to be congratulated and supported in what they're working towards. While their focus is currently partly in exploring the opportunities that an old building may offer, their principal interests are in community-led regenerative opportunities which allow wholeness and inclusion. So an interesting meeting and one to keep an eye on, I think. And as Councillor Greason has said, the Youth Agritech Expo at the Hub in Bensdale, I think, was an excellent opportunity provided to showcase the very many aspects of an adapting rural industry. I spent time with the mobile Gippsland Tech School people who were offering microscopes to their children, the students attending, virtual experiences of forestry and a myriad of innovative food and fibre career options, drone demonstrations, as well as Gippsland Agricultural Group doing core sampling and testing to improve production and soil health. A huge number of partners were involved in this expo, including our council, and all to be congratulated for this event, which supports innovation and adaptation in a forward-looking agricultural industry which faces, no doubt, very many challenges, but also a whole lot of opportunities for our young people. Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'll leave my report there.
Councillor Uri, thanks very much. Councillors, as I mentioned, I just want to thank the Deputy Mayor for stepping in while I've been away on a couple of interesting and exciting personal matters. So thanks very much for that, Arthur. But councillors, I'll keep mine to a couple of dot points. Many of you probably hear that we do radio ads on TRFM and on Reg FM, and many people say that it's great to hear you on the radio because I can turn you off. Well, I did a very unusual radio interview for Triple M at Gosford recently. Triple M Gosford up on the mid-north coast of New South Wales. And what had happened was a Bairnsdale community map had appeared in a park and had been there for a long time in Gosford. We think that Wyong and Wyong might have got confused at some stage in the past. But anyway, that was probably one of the most unusual radio interviews I've done. A little bit frivolous and fun. Councillor, I want to acknowledge the work that you've been doing and being out and about. I think it's really important that you have that presence in the community. And I will just dwell on a public hearing that Ms Weigel and I attended, and thank you, Fiona, for you and your officers for preparing an excellent report. This was an inquiry into the implications of severe weather events on national, regional, rural and remote road networks. And we do impacts in those ways pretty well. So it was really quite important that we were able to make that contribution to the Federal Standing Committee on Regional Development, Infrastructure and Transport from the Department of the House of Representatives. So that was important. A couple of you have acknowledged Volunteers Week, and I think our Volunteers Honour Roll is out in the foyer there. Is that correct? I think I've seen it about, and I just want to acknowledge those recent additions to that and to all the volunteers in our community. Well done. The last thing I want to point out that last Friday, councillors, I was at MAV State Council, and MAV, for those unaware, is the Municipal Association of Victoria, the peak industry body for local government. 70 of 79 councils were represented there, and there were over 100 motions that were put. And acting CEO, you were there with me, and I'd just like to point out that from my memory that I think even though there was debate and vigorous discussion, that I think all motions that were put were agreed to. So thank you for being there at that meeting. That's enough from me, councillors, and I'll submit that report for those who want to read it at some stage in the future. But councillors, thanks very much for all the work you do in representation. It's great that you are there in our community. Let's move on to item 5, which is officers' reports, and the first one is 5.1 from the Portfolio of Assets and Environment, and this is the draft East Gippsland Culture and Creativity Strategy 22-23. Ms Weigel, this is you.
This is me. Thank you, Mayor.
And I'll just say goodbye to some of those community members. Thanks for being here tonight.
So, councillors, presented tonight for formal consideration is the draft Culture and Creativity Strategy, which will cover a time span of 2023 to 2033, so a 10-year strategy.
Pardon me, it's 33. Sorry, I misread that. I should have put my glasses on.
The plan identifies the delivery of our council plan identifies the delivery of a culture and creativity strategy as a major initiative, and it's a great pleasure to be able to deliver on this initiative tonight. The strategy, if adopted, will be Council's guide to fostering a thriving cultural life across the Shire. The strategy enables Council to capture the importance of place and the role of culture and creativity in social recovery, supporting the development of local creative industries, articulating the public value of culture and creativity, and ensuring culture and creative experiences are provided across the whole Shire and not just in our major towns. In adopting the strategy, Council would be making a commitment to foster the growth of culture and creative communities, support communities to undertake their own initiatives, champion the region's diverse cultures and creative activities, and embed creativity into the fabric of the Shire. The draft strategy builds on the recommendations and findings of the East Gippsland Community Vision 2040 and local place and community plans. The draft strategy also has strong synergies with the three key strategic documents identified as our pillar strategies, being the Economic Development Strategy, the Municipal Health and Wellbeing Plan, and the Environmental Sustainability Strategy. The strategy has been developed with extensive community and stakeholder engagement. Considering all that I've just mentioned, officers recommend Council adopts the draft Culture and Creativity Strategy as presented. And with me tonight to answer any questions of a technical nature is our Manager of Council Enterprises, Chris Wayne, who's been instrumental in the development of this strategy. Thank you.
Ms Weigel, thank you. Good evening, Chris. Thanks for being here. Councillors, are there any questions of our officers on this important document? Councillor Crook.
Thank you, Mayor and Ms Weigel. It may be a question for you, Chris, or Fiona, I'm not sure. This is a big document. It has a large time horizon of 10 years. Obviously, this is going to need to be broken down into component parts over those years. I wonder if you can just speak to the process about how that will actually happen.
Interesting. Thanks, Councillor Crook.
Thank you, and I'd ask that Mr Wayne answers this question.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Crook, and also thank you, Fiona. So with a strategy with such a long horizon, the plan is to have 4-year action plans, and at the start of every 4 years, we look to assess the current environment and the current actions that have been completed in the strategy and work out with consultation with the community what the next 4-year action items would be. The action plan would be reviewed annually, and at the end of the 4 years would be reassessed again. Some of the items that would be reviewed every 4 years would include budget allocation, changes in the community because we've got an ever-changing landscape at the moment, and also opportunities that may have come to the region which weren't identified or weren't available to be assessed at time of creation of the strategy.
Thanks for that, Mr Wayne. Councillor Buckley.
Thank you, Mayor. So, look, being a singer-songwriter and having had a career in being creative, I fully support the work that's been done here. I really feel it's important. But first, I'd like for the community to be assured that the direction and the energy and ratepayers' money that's been put into this particular policy provides social and economic benefits. So what sort of, can you explain to me how that will eventuate, and also the provision that we will support locally homegrown, produced, and variety and homegrown events?
Interesting question. Thank you. Mr Wayne, Ms Weigel.
Thank you, and I think I might hand this one to Mr Wayne to answer as well. Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Buckley. And a key part of this strategy and a key part of Council delivering this strategy is ongoing engagement with the community and with the creative sector. And that includes officers being active in the community and understanding the needs and wants of local artists and local creatives on how they deliver their programming, their services, and how they develop to deliver culture and creative experiences to the community. This strategy is really a strategy that's associated with working with the community and not council doing everything, but actually embracing the local talent we have and trying to nurture that to ensure that they can grow and deliver what they want in the community, not just what council believes the community or the creative sector needs. A lot of this engagement will drive the actions that will be identified in 4-year action plans, as I mentioned before in answering Mr Cook's question.
So the economic benefits in figurative sums, do you have any sort of projections that will be a benefit to, you know, to the region? What sort of figures are we sort of hoping to procure from this type of investment?
I'm happy to have a first answer to this or a response to this, and I would draw councillors' attention to the economic section of the covering report, which talks about the creative economy contributes to cultural diversity, social inclusion and environmental sustainability. It also refers to some work that was undertaken in 2020 by the Australian Council of the Arts, which released a research paper on the importance of domestic arts tourism and the connecting to country. So given that we have a significant tourism destination, East Gippsland can see visitors' lengths of stay extended as they embrace East Gippsland's vibrant arts and cultural experience. So we see both tourism benefits from culture and creativity and local industry benefits, as Mr Wayne has pointed out. So at this point in time, we haven't gone into to the point of quantifying those benefits, but certainly one of the things, as Mr Wayne has mentioned, is developing the action plans and then assessing the impacts of the actions so that we make sure that we are supporting action that will support the local economy and the local visitor economy. So we can't give you a definitive figure, Councillor, but we believe it will have significant social and economic benefits for local communities. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for the question. Councillors, Councillor Uri.
Thank you. My question relates to the money side of this strategy as well, and I wonder if I could have some bit more information about what the budget for arts and creativity might be. I understand you're going to look at that in the next stage, but could we have an idea of whether the budget might be increased or decreased, or is that too hard to say at the moment?
And certainly, I'll ask Mr Wayne to give a little bit more detail, but in the resourcing will be picked up in the first stages of developing and implementing the action plans to make sure that we have a resourcing plan that complements the strategy. However, Mr Wayne may wish to elaborate on that a little. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Fiona. So council currently contributes over $800,000 annually to the delivery of arts and culture activity to the community, and as just mentioned, we'll be reviewing that as the first step of the action plan and making sure those resources align with what the community needs, and that's something we identified throughout the consultation process of the strategy. The budget allocation will continually be reassessed over the life of the strategy, and this is to ensure that we support the needs of the creative sector over the whole 10-year strategy cycle, and not just focus on what budget's required in the first 4 years and then stick to that for the 10-year life cycle of the strategy.
If I could just add to that, one of the things that we heard very clearly from our some of the stakeholders like Creative Victoria and the likes was that having a good strategy also supports the attraction of external funding into the region to help with the implementation. So we would see that the budget would not just be about council money, council and ratepayer money, but how we can also draw some of those other funding streams in to help with implementation.
Thanks for the question.
Yes, thank you.
Councillors, are there any further questions of officers? Councillors, I see none. Councillors, there is a recommendation there. Do I have a motion, councillors? Councillor Greeson, seconded Councillor Buckley. Thank you. Councillor Greeson, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, I would. I'm very pleased to see this strategy. It's as you said, Ms Weigel, it'll make a big difference to this community in terms of giving some weight to, you know, what's happening here already with the support of the council behind it. And I just want to say that I think the underlying principles of this strategy, and it's well worth reading, express the hopes and aspirations for this council to work with and support and take inspiration from the people in our communities who dare to dream and dare to create. These underlying principles, I think, have the capacity to change this Shire in ways that will encourage communities to thrive and create and bring joy to the people in them. And it's up to us as councillors, I think, to keep on listening to what communities are telling us and to support the council officers to be able to respond accordingly and achieve the best that they can for East Gippsland. Thank you.
Councillor Greason, thank you. Councillor Buckley, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, I certainly support Councillor Gresham's sentiments, and all I can say is that it'd be a very dull life if we didn't have music and if we didn't have art and if we didn't have performance. It brings people together and we can't undervalue that. It doesn't have a price tag, and social inclusion is so important, and so I support this wholeheartedly, and I hope that it helps. I hope that those people who, you know, sometimes they don't even they can't afford to put bread and butter on their plate because they're artists and they're scraping to make a living out of it. We should be supporting them in every way that we can. So I fully support the motion.
Councillor Buckley, thank you. Councillors, the motion opposed. Would anybody else like to speak for or against the motion? Councillor Uri.
Yes, thank you. Just briefly, Mayor, I'm very excited about this strategy. I think it's awesome. I really like the tone of it. I think it describes our community beautifully and reflects the care that was taken in consulting with a broad number of people, individuals and organisations throughout our community, and reflects what we know is there already, which is something really precious across our various communities. And I think we all understand the value of nurturing these creative communities in place, but also what they do in our everyday lives as well, to nurture creativity so that we all think in an innovative sort of way is something that has value not just in the arts but in the way we make decisions. And we know that we can't turn culture and creativity on. It needs to be nurtured over a period of time. Artistic expression is something that's really very deep, and I think that this strategy reflects that need to grow and to support the arts and creativity in our communities. So I love the strategy and I look forward to the next steps in seeing the action plan developed, and I'm very happy to vote in favour of it. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Councillor Uri. Councillors, would anybody else like to speak for or against the motion? Councillors, I'd just like to contribute by saying I think this is a practical without being prescriptive strategy, which I think is what we need for such a forward-facing document. But it's also not necessarily ours. It actually belongs to the community. I just want to commend the process and paraphrase that 140 or more online respondents, 6 public forums with 87 community members, engagement with traditional owner groups, 34 individual and small group consultations, site visits, and also a meta-analysis of other Shire documents. It really has been a bottom-up approach, and I commend the staff who have actually been able to synthesise all of that and to put it into a document that is accessible as it is. So congratulations. Councillors, let's put this to the vote. All those in favour? Thanks, CEO. That's carried and unanimously. Councillors, let's move on to item 5.1.2, and this is a contract 1570R Can River Roadside Rest Area Station and Central Street and Baum Street, Can River. Thank you, Ms Weigel.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillors, tonight you're being requested to consider awarding a contract to construct additional car parking in Can River Township. These works will deliver an additional 46 car parks spread across 3 sites, with a key focus on providing strategic car parking for local traffic that would otherwise use prime car parking within the main street. The works were facilitated through a Commonwealth Government grant, which required the parking to be on street. Considerable community engagement has taken place with letter drops to all residents and community drop-in sessions during the project's development. This led to a range of options being identified for motorists to stop in the town to importantly rest and revive. The final design will deliver 10 newly constructed parallel parks in Station Street and improve drainage and footpath connections. Currently the road is unformed gravel road with an open swale drain. A second area in Central Street will have an additional 28 newly constructed car parks with a mix of parallel and standard parking made available. Improvements to the existing drainage and footpath connections will also have been made in this part of the works. Currently the road is an unformed gravel track with little or no drainage infrastructure and is underutilised considering its proximity to nearby public facilities. There are a number of physical constraints that make the extension of this connection to Princes Highway unachievable. These constraints are understood by the community. The final area in Baum Street will have an additional 8 new parallel car parks created, providing opportunity for longer vehicles to access these and along the adjoining streets of Cameron Street and Tambourine Road. Additional parking was identified by the community as part of the development of the Cann Valley Community Plan, and it's pleasing to be able to deliver this community and business need for a community where passing trade is increasingly important part of the local economy. Councillors, the report tonight includes a confidential attachment which details the tender evaluation process and the recommendations of the tender evaluation panel. Tonight with me is also Sayaram Jegatheswaram, Manager Capital Projects and Plans, who is available to answer any questions of a technical nature. Thank you.
Ms Weigel, thank you. Mr Jegatheswaran, thank you for being here tonight too. Councillors, are there any questions of officers? Yes, Councillor Van Diggle.
Thank you, Ms Weigel. I'm wondering, in terms of community consultation, I'm sorry if it's written in the report really clearly, but how many people did actually engage in community consultation? You said letterbox drop-off and some community sessions, but was there any sort of negative feedback as well around this plan?
I believe Mr Jegatheswaran has got some more detail around the community consultation, so I might pass this over to him. Thank you.
Thank you.
And at the moment, critique, he's just disappeared.
Maybe he tried to unmute and he left the meeting instead.
And
oh, there he is.
Back again.
Sorry about that. Not sure what happened. Thank you for the question. I've got most of it. So in terms of the consultation, I don't have a number as to how much responses we got back, but it was all positive feedback from what we received for the project.
Perhaps we could go through the extensive consultation though, Sayaram, so which started, I believe, in December 2021 with initial...
That's correct, yeah.
Would you like to take the councillors through the extent of consultation?
Yep, so the project was first initiated back in early 2021 after council received a significant grant through federal government, local government recovery plan. And that highlighted the requirement for on-street car parking for the project. So the project proposal included works at multiple locations in the Cann River Township, which identified Station Street, Central Street and Baum Street for off-street parking.
So then perhaps I'll follow on with a little more. So then from December 2021 to February 22, we continued engagement with the community through concept proposals. Then in April 2022, we had a USA page created and letterbox drops were undertaken to all Cann River residents, advising of the project and future community consultation sessions. In April 22, a separate letter drop was also undertaken to those properties that may be directly impacted by the future works as their property backs onto the nearby residential streets. And in May 2022, there was community drop-in sessions at the Bush Nurse and Cann River Community Centre that were well represented. And there's been ongoing consultation post the community sessions, with both online through the UOSO pages and through the RSL and the community hub there. So whilst we can't give you actual figures, we can give you a reassurance that there has been extensive consultation with this community on this project.
Yeah, thank you. I guess I'm just asking because this has obviously been brought to me or to us, and I wasn't aware in the past of this consultation happening. So I don't want to make a decision for Cairn River that then they're going to be very unhappy about. But if I have an assurance that it's been positive, that's great. Thank you.
Councillor Van Diegel, thank you. Councillor White, you had a question.
Yes, the design shows that you're actually creating like a cul-de-sac in behind those houses heading out towards the Princes Highway, but any vehicles towing can't do a U-turn to get back out. I'm a bit unsure as to whether this is a good idea, but was any consideration given to producing a better road of Station Street, which does actually come out on the Princes Highway, to avoid vehicles having to turn around? They could come in off the Monero Highway and are pointing in an easterly direction on Station Street towards the Princes Highway, so they don't have to backtrack and they could just continue on and come out further just out of Cairn River in Station Street.
Councillor White, you just need some clarification on the drive-through capacity of the proposal. Is that correct?
The proposal, as we said, there were a range of concepts that were developed and discussed with the community. So there was a range of considerations undertaken about what was able to be achieved, and also remembering that this was a Commonwealth grant, what was able to be achieved within budget. One of the things we would have liked to do was pop the parking out onto, so it rejoined Princes Highway at the end of that Station Street, Central Street area. Unfortunately, there's some major physical constraints there, which would have meant that there was probably another $1 million required to make that a through area. So the intent of this area, and it will be signposted as such, is not for long vehicles. It is to free up parking in other parts of the town for long vehicles. And this has been discussed with the community, I understand, in some detail. This is to encourage those that go to Cairn River regularly, they're working there or they're visiting regularly, to use those car parks that are a little more difficult to find but are now formed and will be well used, to free up that short stop parking in the main street so that we can ensure that we're supporting those travellers that are going to stop and spend in the town.
Councillor White, thanks for pointing that out. Councillor Buckley.
Yeah, very similar question. So I'll rephrase it so that I can get some answers of clarification. So will there be signposted dedicated spots for vehicles who have caravans and trailers? And also with the design concept, will there be provision made so in the future, if funding can be procured, that drive-through design can be achieved?
So, Councillor, is there a range of spots? I think there's over 40 long vehicle parks scattered throughout Cairn River. And some of the parking, especially that around Baum Street, is able to be used for long vehicles as well. So there will be additional car parking that can be used for long vehicles, but there's also additional parking for longer stay vehicles that are not towing vehicles. So between the mix and given the physical constraints, this is what we've come up with. The plan would be to then work with, if we had a different funding source, to perhaps look at off-road parking, which is much easier to accommodate some of those long vehicles than using the on-street. As I said at the beginning of the presentation of this report, there were constraints around the funding for what we could use it for, which was on-street parking. So it's a mix of long vehicle parking where we could facilitate that, and additional standard parking where we can as well. So as we've mentioned in the past, to extend the parking through to back to the highway, there are some fairly significant constraints. which when we're investigated, given the physical conditions, would add an extra $1 million to the project. So really we'd have to work with the Cann Valley community about whether that's their highest priority or whether they have additional priorities that they'd like us to seek funding for. Thank you.
Councillor Buckley, thanks for the question. Councillors, are there any further questions? Ms Weigel, a couple of interesting points have been raised, and maybe it's about wayfinding and how we're going to ensure that we don't have long vehicles inadvertently get into Station Street and Central Street and find that they can't turn around without a 73-point backing manoeuvre.
Absolutely, and I'm sorry I should have covered up on this. As part of the project, there will be good wayfinding signing introduced as well. We'll be making it very clear that where there are areas that are not suitable for caravan parking because there's not that turning capacity, and we'll be trying to direct long vehicles to the areas that are suitable. So wayfinding and signage is just as important as the other aspects of this project and will certainly be a component of it. So thank you for the prompt, Mayor.
Thanks for the clarification. No, I appreciate it. And the questions from other councillors sort of alluded to that. Councillors, are there any further questions of officers? Well, thanks for your questions. Councillors, there is a recommendation there. Do we have a motion? Councillor Allen, do we have a seconder? Councillor Crook. Thanks very much. Councillor Allen has requested to move the recommendation, and at the moment on the screen is what it looks like. And Councillor Allen, you are going to request to populate the blanks there, please.
Yes.
What do you want to populate them with?
Paragraph 2, could you populate that with accept the tender submitted by Fullerton Hogan Industries Proprietary Limited for CON 2023-1570R Cann River Roadside Rest Area Station, Central and Baum Street, Cann River, for the contract amount of $1,044,470.56 exclusive of GST, please.
Thank you. Could you just check on the screen that's what you're actually moving? And then I will double back to Councillor Crook and make sure that you're happy with that is what you're seconding.
That's correct, Mayor.
Yes, I'm happy with that, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Allen, did you want to speak to the motion?
Only to say that Cann River is a wayside stop on the way to Mallacoota, and it's a very, very busy centre, and parking is often at a premium. So anything that allows people to park and stay a bit longer and spend a bit more in the town is a good thing.
Councillor Allen, thank you. Councillor Crook, did you want to speak to the motion?
I just second what Councillor Allen has said and reiterate the importance of the visitor economy to the Cann River area. This is obviously another really welcome investment in the future of their town. So, very good.
Councillors, is the motion opposed? And or would anybody like to speak for or against the motion? Thanks, councillors. I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Thanks, CEO. That is carried unanimously. See you later, young leaders. Thanks for being here. All the best with whatever you're doing. Do it well. Councillors, we're moving on to item 5.2, which is under Mr McConnell's banner of Place and Community. And you are going to...
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to declare a conflict of interest.
Yes.
Foreshadowed earlier.
Thank you.
And so I'll leave the chamber and hand over to Martin Richardson.
Terrific.
Thank you.
Councillors, I'll just draw your attention to the item, which is 5.2.1, Planning Application 19-2023-P-25A, Wellington Street, Paynesville, building and works for 2 dwellings on 2-lot subdivision, including common property. Mr Richardson, good evening.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, councillors. Councillors, before you is a report seeking to approve buildings and works for 2 dwellings and a 2-lot subdivision, which is not contentious in officers' views, but is reported due to the conflict just declared. In accordance with the planning delegations policy and in the interests of transparency, the matter is to be reported to council. So the main points of the report for council to consider, are that the application has been made subject to public notice and no formal objections were received. Officers did receive inquiries about the proposal and early concerns about the plans, that they were different to the plans that were shared by the landowners in their consultation. However, these concerns were rectified through discussions with officers, the neighbours and the applicant, and the neighbours eventually did not lodge any objection. The application was amended to include the correct plans. Overall, the assessment of the proposal is that the proposal complies with all of the relevant objectives of the planning scheme, and refer to clauses 55, which relates to development of 2 or more dwellings, and clause 56, which relates to residential subdivision. There is one variation to the standards within those provisions that is sought, relating to the boundary setback at the rear lot. The officer assessment is that the boundary setback variation is appropriate, as the rear boundary abuts a lane about 14 feet wide in old speak, which is an additional buffer to the next adjoining residential lot. We consider the development to be an appropriate use of centrally located and fully serviced land to provide new additional housing, and standard conditions have been recommended. The officer's recommendation is to approve the proposal via a planning permit, and also present with me, yes, is Robert Pringle, coordinator, not with me, online, is the coordinator of statutory planning, Robert Pringle. Thank you, Mayor. The report is presented for council consideration.
Mr. Richardson, thank you. Mr. Pringle, well placed to answer any questions, councillors, if you have any. Councillor Crook, you have a question.
Yes, more of a confirmation. My understanding is that the access to the 2 new blocks will be via way of a common shared driveway, and just making sure that council will take on no obligations in regards to that access into the future.
That's correct, councillor. Through you, Mayor, the driveway is common property, and the maintenance and management of that driveway will be up to the respective landowners.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Uri, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. This application is for a 2-lot subdivision. However, I'm interested in the plans for the dwellings to be built there. Currently, I believe home dwellings need to be built to a 7-star rating. I wondered if I could have some commentary, please, about what that actually means, and does council have any ability to control whether or not a gas connection is provided, and also the orientation of the buildings, and including the colour of the roof? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Uri, for your very insightful questions, and thank you also for giving us notice so that we could prepare a comprehensive response. So I'll come firstly to the 7-star rating. The 7-star building rating is a requirement under the National Construction Code of 2022, which came into effect in October 22, with a transition period through to October 23. There are several options under the code for complying with the energy efficiency requirements, and the most common of those is an assessment under what's called the Nationwide House Energy Rating Scheme, or NAITHRS. I can provide councillors with further details on the matters that NAITHRS assessment includes, but they include solar orientation, glazing, placement of doors, room size and placement, insulation, roof and wall colours, lighting, etc. So all of that is thrown into the mix, and the rating comes out according to the score, if you like, that each of those factors is given. Some of them can be traded off against each other, which will bring me to the black roofs question. The energy rating is assessed for council's information through the building permit process, not the planning permit process. So the building application that's lodged must be certified as complying with the score against that rating scale. There's no, in relation to gas, our standard condition for servicing, external servicing authorities states that the owner of the land must enter into agreements with any relevant authorities for the provision of services, water supply, drainage, sewerage, electricity and gas. And that must be done to the requirements of the authority at the relevant relevant legislation at that time. In the case, as we've discussed before, where gas is no longer mandatory, the authority in that case would say, if you want to connect to the gas, here's the requirement. If you don't have to. But basically, again, that's regulated through those regulatory processes in terms of gas. So we don't require gas connections, and people may choose to provide a gas connection or not to. And if they do, then obviously they have to meet the various standards of the gas authority. Hope that answers that part. But it is a matter that will be discussed in future in relation to sustainable housing. And finally, not quite finally, the black roofs, there's no specific planning requirement regarding the colour of roofs, except through the design and development overlay, which relates more to appearance, so impact on the visual area, landscape, that sort of thing. In relation to the energy impacts of black roofs, which are well documented, then that comes back to the 7-star rating. The black roof can be compensated by good heating arrangements, orientation, etc., and the score will hit the benchmark. There will be a further discussion about the colour of roofs, I'm sure, in council in the next 12 months or so. And finally, orientation. I think, as I've mentioned, we do have control over that through the planning scheme, and there's an interesting clause at clause 56, which says that 70% of the lots need to be oriented east 20 degrees north to east 30 degrees south. So this is a straight east-west orientation, so it's perfect in terms of orientation, so it meets that standard. Thank you. Sorry for the long answer, but worthy of a bit of time. Thank you.
Yes, I appreciate the long answer. Thank you, and I look forward to those further discussions. Thank you. Thank you,
Councillor
Mayor.
Uri. Councillors, are there any further questions? I don't see any. Councillors, there is, in that case, there is a recommendation. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Stowe, do I have a seconder, councillors? Councillor Crook. Councillor Stowe, would you like to speak to the motion?
Well, I only to say it's basically an infill. All the services are there. It meets all our requirements and should go ahead.
Councillor Crook. Councillor Crook, did you want to speak to the motion? Seconded. Councillors, is the motion opposed? Would anybody else like to speak for or against the motion? I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? The matter is carried, and it's carried unanimously, CEO. Thank you. Thank you, planners. Councillors, we're moving, there isn't any urgent business from my understanding, so we're going to move into confidential business, and in a moment I will ask for a motion to take us into confidential business. But for our community members outside, we're moving into confidential, and you are welcome to move downstairs. You don't have to leave, but when we have decided this particular matter or these matters, we will be just opening up the meeting again to close it, if that makes sense. So don't feel you have to hang around. Thanks for being here. Right, councillors. I need someone to move that we go into confidential. Moved Councillor Allen, seconded Councillor Van Diggle. Councillors, the motion opposed. Anybody else like to speak for or against the motion? Councillors, I'll put the motion to the vote that we're moving into closed session confidential. We are in carried. We're ready to go? Councillors and officers, that concludes our meeting of the 23rd of May 2023. And before I go, I just will like publicly to acknowledge Mr Cannizzaro. Peter, this is your last council meeting with council, even though your role is not necessarily public facing. You are a public face around the table, and many observers will wonder who you are and what you do. Well, what he does is a lot, and he does it really well, and you're going to go and do it somewhere else now. So on behalf of council, we wish you well and in your new endeavours.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, councillors. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Councillors, it is 7:47 and I will declare the meeting closed after thanking you all for your deliberations and officers, as usual, for your excellent reports that allow our good decisions to be made. Thank you. Good evening.